You're listening to the Hawke Media Podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping entrepreneurs and executives crush the digital marketing game. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's get into the show.
All right, you're listening to HawkeTalk. I'm here today with Michael Gruen. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Eric?
Good. So yeah, I have an assumption with a lot of the people I interview, including you, that you came out of the womb and just started doing deals. And I think you might be the closest to that of anyone I've interviewed. So take me back, where were you born? How did it all start?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, to an Orthodox Jewish family.
Yeah.
And I've been a deal junkie since I was in 8th grade. I get off on it. I love it. It's all I know how to do, honestly. The thing I've always realized about entrepreneurship is we're only good at one thing. We're entrepreneurs, and anyone really are good at one or two things. And in society, a big metric of success is cash, right, or net worth. So in that regard, entrepreneurs do really well, but we also lack in other areas. That sometimes I go, is it worth it? But I've always been a deal junkie and entrepreneur, and I'm good at one thing, which is structuring and closing deals, not operations, literally just structuring and closing. I just do that all day.
And so how did that start? What did other than being Orthodox Jews, what did your parents do? What was their profession?
My dad works in the tourism industry. He's a pretty high level executive in New York. My mom doesn't do anything. My mom is a marriage counselor for charity. She just helps people out in the community for free. Just because
you got the art and the hustle on both sides.
Yeah, my mom is the nicest person in the world. People always say that about their parents. I don't say that about my dad. My dad could be an asshole, but love him, but he could be an asshole. My mom is the sweetest person. I mean, that's also part of where part of what drove me to be successful was also my mom. I didn't really get a lot of time with my mom. Never really understood me. Just I grew up in an Orthodox family. People don't realize a lot of the stuff that you think is normal doesn't fly. You can't have a girlfriend in 12th grade or 11th grade or 10th grade. It's not a thing. You can't hang out with girls. A lot of the things are just normal in society. You can't you can't watch TV. All that stuff is taboo. So I kind of grew up in what they thought was me under a rock, but they found out very quickly that I was kind of living a double life in that regard.
So tell me about that. So were you actually sneaking out and hanging out with friends that were outside the Orthodox community?
Well, I meant more in work. In terms of work, I was running I was in 8th grade, and it was on a game called RuneScape, and I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year selling accounts and gold on the game. And I realized that
by the way?
Yeah, that is how I met Brock.
Nice.
I just realized at a really young age that global currency is not going to fly. Fiat was not going to be long term. And I was looking for all forms of alternative currencies. So whether it was gaming, I knew gaming would be something. I didn't know if it'd be long term because obviously the economy is left up to a bunch of programmers sitting in an office. Yeah. But I just knew that there's going to be other mediums of exchange. And I made so much money off of RuneScape, and I loved the game. It was so much fun to play.
So what led to that? Take me back before 8th grade. What were you a gamer for a while and then got into RuneScape, or did you have other business stuff you were doing, or was it literally you fell into the first game you loved and you fell into the first business stuff you were doing?
I mean, I was always a hustler. So I was always selling little things or going door to door. My uncle owned a Judaic store, which is Jewish goods. They sell all the Jewish stuff. And I'd go door to door. He sells me wholesale, a little markup, and I'd kind of retail it at retail value and deliver it. So I was always trying to hustle and do local things, but we're talking about a few $100, not hundreds of thousands.
But still, when you're 10 years old, making a few $100 is still something. It's more than most.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing is, I spent it all the time. I just bought it on food. My mom is the worst cook in the world, the absolute worst cook in the world, and she admits it too. It's it's a joke in my community. So my mom is the most helpful person to cooking. My family lacks patience. I lack patience. My mom lacks patience, and cooking requires a lot of patience, right?
Yep.
To cook something right requires a lot of patience. So we'd have food and it'd be burnt, or instead of oil she put applesauce and it tastes like shit. People always tell me oh, if your mom's cooking so bad, how'd you get fat? I'm it's called takeout, brother. I bought takeout every single night for 10 years of my life. Being in 9 years old, 10 years old, and making $1,000 a month, $2,000-$3,000 a month. It's easy to go and take that money and buy schnitzel sandwiches, deep fried schnitzel sandwiches every night, and doesn't work well for the tummy.
No, it does not. So And did your like, even with the early hustle, did that come from your parents at all? Like, was your dad or mom like, hey, you should go out and make some bucks? Or you like,
No.
what was that? I'm curious what that first draw to that was. Like that first time you did some sort of little business deal.
Dude, I was hungry. I wouldn't eat my mom's food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was hungry.
It wasn't I need to go make some money so I can buy some food.
It was literally, I want to make some money so I don't have to like starve myself to death every night. That's literally how it started. Like I did not like my mother's food. Also, I always enjoyed doing things. I hated the act of like sitting down and doing nothing. That pisses me off even today. Yep. Like people are like, oh, you should relax. It's like, and do what? And sit on my couch and watch more Family Guy? Like, yeah, it just doesn't interest me. I'd rather like the mental challenges for me are the best. So like going things on a road doesn't excite me. Like I need to be doing things that are stimulating. And business has always been that thing. And like I was always the guy without hustle. Like even before I made money, I was collecting autographs. And I was in everyone's grill. Like I was mailing thousands of letters a day. I'd like buy hundreds of stamps and send out like autograph requests. Huh. I would go and meet them.
Yeah, it was to sell them?
No. Oh. Just at the time, which I was like 8 or 9 years old, it was really just to collect them. I thought it was cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I was like a big sports fan too. So I'd like go to games, and beginning I'd wait outside, and then like, I'd see executives walk out and get to know the executives, and then eventually they'd like let me get like, batting practice passes. It would help me. So I have like some really cool autographs back in from like when I have my Piazza stuff originals, like some really cool autographs that I got when I was a kid. So I was always like a hustler, whether it was for money or just to like get what I wanted. I was always like willing to put in the work. And
you obviously have a level of confidence too to go do that, like to go try to hit them up, get those tickets, etc. Did that where did that come from? Where did that just a lot of kids are shy.
I don't know, man. It's natural. Like that's what I always tell people. It's like you can't want to be an entrepreneur. You either are or you aren't. It really is a DNA like thing to it. Yeah. And I mean, like I'm not gonna say you can't train yourself and succeed, but like I always tell like Josh and Griffin, it's like because sometimes Griffin's like, I don't know if cut out for this. And if you're thinking it, you're probably not. Don't doubt yourself. If you're doubting yourself, then you're probably not cut out. And like I give them slack because like you're 21 and also in a weird situation with all this fame, etc. Yeah. But generally speaking, like you just do. The entrepreneurs just do it, and there's like they don't see obstacles. They just figure it out and go for it.
The Elon Musk line that everybody's quoting off his Clubhouse talk was like, someone asked him how he gets his motivation. He's like,
I saw that.
If you need to get motivation, don't become an entrepreneur or something on those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like been my fundamental problem with like the hustle porn culture. Like, I like Gary a lot, Gary Vaynerchuk, and I think the world of him, and when we're friendly, but it's just the trying to push people to be an entrepreneur is sometimes detrimental to them.
I agree.
Because they feel like they have to do it, when in reality, there's nothing wrong with being an employee and living that life. Like it's meant for people. Some people are just meant for that, and they're going to excel at other things, right? They can excel at at whether it's knowledge that they like, or being good at a game, or whatever it is that they like to do. Everyone's skill set's different. Maybe it's making people feel better. Maybe it's like, like sometimes when I'm having a hard day because I'm working for Griffin will come to my room and just hang out with me. And that's what I need, right? I don't need him to be the entrepreneur. I just need that friend at night when I'm down or, stressed, and like just to hang out and like shoot the shit. And that's like the role he's fulfilling in that ecosystem. And there's nothing wrong with that. No. He doesn't have to be the deal structure, the deal closer. He could just be the friend that's like being there for me when I close deals for him. Yep. So people like feel they need to go into that box because everyone's telling them to. And I think that's actually a detriment to the people that they're telling that to sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's right. So you're selling digital currency and accounts at, in 8th grade. What happens next? Give me the story.
So
there's a story that I've never actually heard the full story, but I'm pretty sure you told me you had graduated college at 16. So
no, I graduated at 18. 18. So here's what happened.
That's not normal, to be clear. That's not a usual thing. So let's hear the story.
Well, here's what happened. So I was kind of doing this like behind the scenes stuff. Like I was doing this in high school, in like 9th grade, early 9th grade. And in 8th grade, like I was kind of just doing it. And remember, Jewish schools, you can't bring a phone to school. So like I used to buy like, shittier phones that they like, because they used to have a tank, a fish tank. They used to throw phones in that you used in school. Yeah. So, I used to buy like cheaper phones and like just trading stocks. I was always like trying to do things. Yeah. And one day my rabbi was 9th grade was shitting on Jeff Wilpon. I'm a big Mets fan. I was friendly with Jeff, and I raised my hand for like 20 minutes of him just like shitting on the Mets and like he was trying to make a point. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was stupid. And I raised my hand and I said, I want you to know, like, you're impugning motives on somebody that you don't know, and I actually know him, and I'm telling you you're full of crap in front of the whole class. And he hated it. He kicked me out of class, said, you can't come back to school until your dad comes to school. So my dad comes the next morning. And we're all in the room with the principal, my rabbi, and the principal goes, we have a problem here. My dad goes, what? He goes, your son's a compulsive liar. And my dad's like, what'd he say? He's like, oh, he says he knows the Wilpons. And my dad's like, well, it's true. So it's like a tough place to be. And that's kind of when like the school kind of lost hope on me. Like they realized like, okay, this kid's not doing normal things. And that's when my dad also realized like the system wasn't built for me. And you got to remember, like, again, the Jewish system is like, you're in school from 7:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And they do that to avoid you going out, and they do that to avoid you from having distractions and like, you know, improper thoughts or whatever that is. So you're like, in general, if you're not built for the system, like it's very evident. Yeah. You can't like fake it. You can't fake being in school from 7:30 till 9 p.m. at night. It's just not possible.
Yeah. I was in school, from 8 to 3, and I faked it all right. But any longer than that, I would have been out.
Exactly. Like you can fake it for a couple hours and just get it done. You can't fake it for
when you have
15 hours. And also remember, it's a Sunday too. School Sundays. Our only off days was Saturday, or our Fridays were half.
Not allowed to do anything anywhere.
And then Saturday also, you can't do anything, right? Yeah. It's Sabbath. So you're not really left with much time to do things. And that's kind of when, at that point, I knew like, I got to get out of here. Yeah. So I, finagled my way out of high school to graduate and went to a local college, transferred out, graduated at 18. And just been working ever since. I never stopped, and I never want to stop. Like I don't work at this point because I have to. I work because I want to, and it's fun. And like that's the best place to be. The minute it becomes not fun, I'm quitting and I'm running away.
Totally. There's plenty of places you could probably retire to already with the money you've made. So not LA.
And honestly, even LA. I mean, remember, I'm an original Bitcoiner, so it's done okay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's such a great little highlight, is that because you were selling RuneScape, and this is what, 10 years ago now?
Yeah. 2012.
Probably Bitcoin prop. You met Brock, who was looking at Bitcoin back then. You bought, I was told 8 years ago to put 10 grand into it at $8 a coin. And I didn't, but
I did.
Yeah. And you did. That's awesome. And so during that time when you left high school, how long were you doing the RuneScape thing before you started another hustle? I could love another professional progression.
Honestly, I stopped it when they banned my accounts. Like it wasn't meant to be a business for me. It started off because I really loved the game. Yeah. And like, it was just like, honestly, like it was like a fun thing. Originally, it was like, I wanted to be the richest guy in the game and like own all the rare items, and it kind of just evolved from there. But like, I very much loved the game. Yeah. So it's very easy to, start a business around something you really, really love.
And so what happened? What was the next hustle after RuneScape, and when did it start?
So the next hustle was like drop shipping, and like I was always doing like odds and stuff. My first like real thing was I was in 9th grade and I'm sitting courtside at a New Jersey Nets game. Yeah. And next to me, the seat right over from me, I'm courtside, and the seat right over from me is a New York Giants like backup offensive lineman. Yeah. Like I think it was like a late round pick. Like didn't even know if this guy was going to be in the front. Yeah. I was talking to him, and he's like, look, I don't even know if I can feed my family. It's like, they want me to go to training camp. If I want to make the team, it's like guaranteed. He was like talking to me. I was like, let me ask you a question. If I brought you some deals, would you throw me like a commission? And I didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, let me try to make some calls to see what's up. And he's like, sure. So I started like working for him, and I would call like local pottery shops, local pizza shops, everything. I was on the phone with all day, every day. I brought in a friend of mine from high school to like do a commission. It was like sell things, and I sold this guy probably like $250,000 in 2.5 months of like local bullshit, pottery shop meet and greets, like random stuff. And then he was like so excited because it was like that was more money than he was ever going to be, that was guaranteed. Yeah. He was like introducing me to other players. Eventually, I became like the everything guy for like half the New York Giants. And he called me up for like jets. Like one time, 4 a.m, I get a call from this guy. And he's like, OBJ wants a jet. I'm like, that's cool. You can go buy one. I was like, I'm not fucking dealing with this at 4 a.m. But that's like what it became. It became like I was like one of the go-to guys at the Giants who asked for anything. And I was always a hustler. So they'd be like, do you have a connection with the New York Jets? Like, yeah, I do. And I'd be like, I'll figure it out. Yeah, exactly. So I'd make a bunch of calls, send a bunch of cold emails, like figure it out. And 9 out of 10 times it worked. I used to host like this football player would host like charity events in Florida. So like I got to know like the CEOs of Wilson because they were sponsoring, they were giving out footballs and stuff. Yep. Mitchell Modell, like just getting to know people based on like using, just because I was doing this stuff. And it was always like, I never abused these things. I was always just like, here's what I'm doing. If you want in, let me know. Sometimes they'd be like, we'll donate items, and then like give cash, whatever it was. We're always really easy to deal with. And it kind of just grew that from there. Then I met this other guy who was an MVP, which is the National Basketball Players Association. He was an agent, this guy, and he was looking for cash flow because the thing about being a sports agent is you're paying people, the top people get paid a bonus, right? So it's not like Major League Baseball where you're getting paid by the league. So like the team pays you the signing bonus. In the NBA, the actual agents give you a very nice signing bonus in order to attract you to sign with them. And we're talking about, it could be $5 million, depending on the player. Like if you're signing like a Lonzo Ball type, it's $5 million cash.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time you're limited on what you can commission wise. Sometimes they'll negotiate the first contract doesn't get commission.
Yeah.
So it's a losing business that they're getting unless you're long term. So this guy wanted to sign decent players, but like it's hard to compete when you're a new agent and all these bigger companies have funding, right? They have millions of dollars in the cash. So it's easy for them to be like, bankroll Kevin Garnett, when he was a rookie. But it's hard for us. So I just said, like, I have what you have. I have what you need, which is cash on hand. Right?
Yeah.
You have what I need, which is like, he was older. He was 26 and he was a certified agent. I couldn't get certified. Yeah. So I was too young. So like, great, let's partner. I'll give you what I have, which is cash on hand. And you give me what you have, which is certification. And that business ended up doing really well. So that was like the first real company that I was like building.
And so that was from 9th grade to when? Like how long did you do that for?
10 and a half.
Oh, so a year and a half?
Yeah.
Okay.
About that.
And when you did that,
the company merged with another company. So I got ousted on purpose. Like I was like done with it. And I got some money and he was happy. Everyone was happy.
Oh. And then, so what happened next? What was the next thing?
So the next thing was a company called Creator Media, which was like one of the OG influencer companies that I started with a guy named Jace Norman, who played Henry Danger on Nickelodeon's Henry Danger. That company did well, but I didn't like the baby.
Where'd that come from?
Where did I meet him? I met him through like a random friend in New York, actually. It's like really obscure. And he was actually the first person that ever like really treated me nicely in LA. And he was like, the #1 Nickelodeon show at the time. So like he was like a king of like, young children's television, and every influencer wanted to be with him. Like he was the guy. And we worked a lot together, but he was never really motivated by money. And it was a lot, it's a lot of work to build a company. And like a lot of these kids are like, I'll build a company. And then it's like, when the work comes to them, they're like, oh, what?
Yeah.
So that was kind of what happened there. He just wasn't interested in like putting any amount of work. And I was like, no worries. So left that and then kind of dabbled in politics for a bit, did some consulting. Obviously like have a lot of friends that were high up at the time in government. So it was like a fun little thing to be around. And then from there, I went to crypto.
But
and I joined.
Just a real quick, because I know a little bit of the story, but you left the the influencer stuff, and you ended up pairing up with the Mooch, right?
Mooch was a good friend. I mean, I'm the guy who plays both sides of the aisle. Like I understand what it means to be a diplomat and be smart about it. I have friends with everyone from Valerie Jarrett down to Mooch to Spicer. I mean, I just know a lot of these people. And I don't know. I don't impugn motives like a lot of people. I think. I think at the end of the day is like we're all fucked anyway. I don't think like politics is gonna make much of a difference. Yeah. So I just kind of like laugh it off, and I understand people like they're evil. I'm just like, I don't care. As long as like they're good people to me, and like they're not. It's a hard place to be in, obviously, because everyone gets victimized and everyone gets villainized. But
and so you were because my understanding was you worked with the Mooch a little bit on the campaign, and then went to the White House with him for a week, and then left.
I never formally went to the White House. I was supposed to. But he actually formally never started. If you go look at the press release when they announced him, his start date was like 2 weeks later. He never actually started officially.
Got it.
When he was there, he was doing like the pre-work, like setting himself up. And he might have been on payroll. I don't actually know the semantics. But like if you go look at the press release, his start date was later than than his actual start. So his whole thing was a mess. Like John Darcy from Skybird was supposed to join. I mean, his whole team no one really materialized. But I hung around the White House for a while when he was there and beyond. And obviously I've introduced you to Mooch, and you've done a lot of work with him. And he's great. And like people even, now he's weird because he's like both sides don't like him, but I love him. He's kind of been he's a little persona non grata, but I love the guy. He's the smartest. And people think he's like an idiot. I'm like, no. You're like, this guy's a Harvard lawyer. Like, he's no slouch. And but he's fun. He's a class act, nicest guy, would do anything for you. So yeah, that's kind of that little chapter, but that was more of like a shits and giggle chapter. Like I had some money, was doing some venture, having fun. It was like more of a shits and giggle, like fun chapter in my life. And then from there, I moved to LA, joined a company called Everpedia as one of their heads of development, co-founded with them a stable coin with Stephen Moore, Trump's nominee to run the Federal Reserve, called Frax, formerly known as the central bank. And then I was working at the time, and I was friends with this guy named Bryce Hall. Bryce is one of the sway members. And this was pre-sway. This is like 2.5, 3 years ago. And I met Josh at his house. Josh and I originally actually hated each other, but we became friendly, just talking at night. And, from there kind of evolved where I was like working with him a little bit on the side. And then eventually, we started this company, and it was supposed to be like a side thing, but I never showed up to my real job, and they kind of got pissed. So I got my vest got canceled there, and I was kind of like, you know what, fuck it. I'll just see where this goes. And it's been fun. I mean, it's like working with your best friends every day, and it's like I'm not needing cash, chasing the bag without having fun. It's just not worth it. And now I get to work every day with two of my best friends. So, it's like a lot more fun.
And so let's dive into that. So at this point, you're 22, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 22 years old, you've had a bigger career than most people before they pass away at 80. But and you're just getting started. I mean, listen, you've built a sports agency and influencer company. You've got into cryptocurrency. You worked in the White House for a small period of time. I think you've got a pretty cool path already.
I've been blessed.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I think the way you think about it is awesome too, which is like, do it because you love it. And if you're having fun, great. If you're not, change it up, do something else. And so with what you're doing now, you're doing a lot of, you're doing deals, you're getting endorsement deals for these guys and stuff. You're doing a lot of venture investing. Like, give me the kind of full spectrum of what you're doing. And just for the clarity of people that don't know, you're working with some of the top male TikTok stars on the planet that have built a bigger brand for themselves than that at this point. They're working with Trillion.
Yeah.
Broader.
So I've heard a company called TalentX. Josh is actually a co-founder of it. Josh Richards, one of the largest influencers. The reason why I started this whole thing with him was because I saw that he wasn't a typical like social media guy. It's what brought me back into the space, because I had promised myself I'll never go back, because it was literally babysitting when I first was in it. And I saw something different about him. It wasn't like he was Mr. Creative or anything like that. There was something about how he thought in numerical terms that was really interesting to me. And we've kind of built, like, I run basically the M&A for the Sway guys. And that's everything from buying, we bought Silly Bands, the company, the legacy company. We're doing a deal with you that's coming up pretty shortly. So anything to do with like real development. And I let my team kind of handle like most of the, stupid stuff.
Got it. Very cool. And so what do you got a couple more questions for you. What do you think's next? Like, do you just do this till you get bored, or do you have some plans for something bigger? Like where do you see this going?
Well, the cool thing about doing this is so many things come out of it, right? Like we're advising so many different companies. We're doing a deal with you that's going to be, I'm going to be more involved in. We have an announcement with Josh and a pretty large A-list actor coming up that I'm really excited about. We're building a company together. So, there's so much actual development. So at this point, I'm a lot more on building than I am on managing. That's kind of where I like to be. It's a sweet spot, right? I get to make my friends rich. I get to work with them, but we're building a lot of independent brands. So at this point, I'm really just founder of 8 or 9 different companies and advisors to some of them, and just doing a lot of real development work. So I kind of like this. It's a sweet spot for me. It's like I'm building again, which is nice. I own real companies, real equity, which is nice. I get to work with my best friends, which is nice. I get to make them rich, which is even nicer. So I'm really happy. I'm in a good spot.
That's awesome. And so last question for me is, even in the short time you've been on the planet, you've accomplished a lot. What's your advice to someone that's trying to either just get started? I agree with you on the hustle born thing. I think not pushing to go that direction if you're not ready for it is good. But let's say someone's ready. What's your big piece of advice? What do you think got you here and gave you that edge?
Clear conviction. I think that people, if you're doubting yourself, don't push yourself to do it necessarily. It's my life is not. The thing is, if you didn't want to do what I did, your life would be hell if you did what I did, because it's crazy, right? People see my calendar and they're like, what the fuck, dude? And I'm just like, but I like that. I don't want it any other way. If I did, I'd tell my assistant, don't schedule it, right? I want it this way. You think it's crazy, so then don't do it. Don't force yourself to do something because other people are doing it. Everyone has their own way. Some people are very free flow. Naval doesn't schedule calls. He's like, just call me and I'll call you back. It's just not how I operate. Like, everyone operates differently, and don't force yourself because other people or your book or the book said it, or you see somebody else, you go, oh, they're successful, like let me do the same thing. Because if you do that, you'll just be miserable. And like, it's not, no amount of money is worth being miserable, right? Yep. Like it's just not. Doesn't mean by like, don't push yourself. It's not like, well, I don't want to be miserable, so I'm gonna sit at home and smoke weed and just watch Family Guy all day. Like that's not good either. You have to be honest with yourself, which is like, what's the healthy balance of your work versus like what's not. But for me, if I had myself sitting at 5 o'clock and I'm like, I have nothing to do, I wouldn't be happy. That would cause me to be miserable. Yep. Right. So for me, I need to have things, for me, if I'm not working until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it's not good for me. Like it bothers me because I feel unproductive. So for me, it's what I need to do. And that's for people talk about burnout a lot or imposter syndrome. You only burn out when you're doing things you don't want to do. You don't burn out if you're doing things you want to do. And I'm at a point in my life where if I don't want to do something, I just say, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. Or I have staff to handle it for me. A lot of times I'm like, Marshall, take it. I'm not doing this. And that's like the benefit. So just make sure you like understanding yourself is the most important thing of any entrepreneur, because most of them do not. So they understand like that they want money, it's better, more hungry, but they do not understand themselves, and that causes failure. You can't sustain that. You can't sustain misery for 25, 30 years to build an empire. You just can't. It's not possible.
I totally agree. I mean, I think, you kind of mentioned at the beginning about the hustle porn side of it, where it's like, all billionaires get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they sleep 2 hours, and then they work all the day and they don't do anything else. It's like, no, that first off, that's completely not true. Second off, like,
yeah, it's definitely not true. I know billionaires wake up 9, 10.
Yeah. And it's like, if it were true, but it doesn't work for you, you can't do that. Like, stop. It's that idea. You look at other people's success and try to emulate how they did it. They did it that way. That's never going to work that way again. And like, you've got to do it your way. And what happens. But as you said, burnout and imposter syndrome happen when you're not doing the right things. Like, I see a lot of entrepreneurs talk about both heavily, and I look at it and I'm like, am I the weird one that hasn't experienced that? Like, don't get me wrong. I've had days when I'm like, I don't want to work anymore and I'll take a break. But, and there's problems I deal with running a business, because running a business is dealing with the biggest problems. If you're the owner, you're going to deal with the biggest shit. But if you're not into that, you probably shouldn't have done this in the first place. I think the last point,
million percent.
And the last point you made that's super important is like, there's no victims in this. We chose to be business owners. Like, I don't feel sorry for a business owner that's miserable being a business owner. Then don't fucking do it. Go get a job.
I only feel sorry for business owners when they're getting attacked by government or other things that are like out of their control, and that shouldn't be there. But if you're dealing with the traditional struggles of like hiring, firing, lawsuits, like it sucks, don't get me wrong, but that's what you signed up for. Exactly. I always say there's a life force majeure clause. It's like if you do anything that, within the norm, like the COVID pandemic killed a lot of businesses, and it sucks. Like, and that shouldn't have been something that hurt them this bad. And I'm not even saying lockdown, not lockdown. I'm just saying that just in general, like no one expected this pandemic to occur, and millions of people's companies are lost. Like my dad's company basically went to shit, and like, you're lucky and I'm lucky we worked in digital where we thrived, but a lot of people don't. And that's like the only time where I feel bad for entrepreneurs. And that's why I think the Barstool Fund was so incredible. And it's like, as much as Dave hates me, I think what Dave's did there is incredible. It's crazy. I mean, it really is. Like, he's the only person that said like, I'm going to have the balls to do it myself. Yeah. And I don't like a small scam. I like 200K, like 27, 28, $29 million. Like that's real money. And he helped real people. So.
And that's the thing. Look at the government stimulus of like $1 trillion. Like, why didn't they take 100 million and do what he did? Like, it's just noxious. Here's
the thing about the stimulus that people don't get. You're paying for that down the road. Oh, yeah. Like, I'm not saying it wasn't good to do it. Yeah, I'm just saying like the reason why Bitcoin is so valuable is because the government doesn't keep themselves accountable to their own money.
Correct.
So
the inflation situation that's going to happen, I think, is going to be serious.
The realized inflation rate is still 0, which is why I'm very scared.
The problem with the way they calculated the inflation rate is they're talking about a fucking jug of milk and like.
I'm agreeing with you. I
know you are.
What I'm saying. Yeah.
You look at the stock market. You look at the places people are putting the stimulus money, which is in the market, in private businesses, which multiples are insane right now, and in home prices.
The venture multiples, dude, are off the fucking chart.
Yeah,
it's insane. It's insane. Like. I'm passing on amazing deals. I'm just like, I cannot do this. Like, I cannot in good conscience put someone else's money here. Exactly. I just can't do it. I feel like an asshole.
And that's what's interesting is like that asset inflation that's happening might not go away. The dollar might devalue to that level. So
That's not great.
no, wouldn't be good.
What's your Bitcoin prediction? Last question for you.
Yeah. What's my what?
What's your Bitcoin prediction long term?
So I don't have a lot, but I'm holding it long term because to me it's a hedge against a lot of other things. And I think
Where do you think it's going to go? Where do you think it's going to go, Cap?
I have no idea. I'm not that educated on it, but I definitely think it's breaking $250,000 at some point. I think that's a no-brainer.
No brainer.
Yeah, but I think it's good a chance it goes higher than that significantly.
I think it hits $500,000.
Well, it's some point. I guess what time frame are we talking here?
10 years.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I mean, I think now when you have like companies like Tesla putting in serious balance sheet money into it and validating it, like that's a whole new step in the direction of like this is here to stay. And it's, to me, Bitcoin reminds me of gold. It's not a currency the way we use it. It's a storage of wealth from the way we're using it now.
It's not even that, dude. It's its own asset class. Like people try to put it into a box. Like people say gold 2.0. I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's hard to because part of the problem with gold is although we know around how much there is, you always can find more gold. Like there's the thing about Bitcoin is we know exactly how many Bitcoin there are in the world and you can't make more. And that like is such a unique, there's nothing like that.
No, what I meant by it is it's the same idea where it's like, it's a store of wealth because people subscribe a value to it. Like, what the fuck is gold? What am I going to use gold for? It's literally useless other than people think it's useful. And so same thing with Bitcoin, in my opinion. And now it's validated enough that I think there's something there. I
agree with you.
Yep.
Well, Erik, you're the man. We're excited to do some business with you, dude.
Same. Thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you coming on.
No, of course. My pleasure, brother.
You've been listening to the Hawke Media Podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, make sure to subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.